Please come get me. My voice shattered over the phone, tears burning hot trails down my face as I pressed myself against the cold marble wall of the service corridor. The sounds of celebration. Champagne glasses clinking, orchestra swelling, 300 guests laughing, filtered through the door behind me like mockery. I can't do this anymore, I whispered, and my voice broke on the last word. Dante didn't ask what happened, didn't ask if I was sure. His voice came back instantly, sharp with command and edged with something lethal. Stay exactly where you are. I'm coming. The line went dead, and I was alone again. Alone in my server's uniform, black vest, white shirt, cheap polyester pants, sitting on a floor that probably cost more per square foot than I'd earned in a year. Through the service window, I could see the celebration continuing. My sister Elise, radiant in her custom wedding gown, laughing with her new husband. My parents holding court near the champagne fountain, accepting congratulations from their elite friends. My own sister's wedding. And I was the help. 20 minutes, I told myself. Just hold together for 20 minutes. But even as I thought it, I knew those 20 minutes would feel like forever. So I sat there, hugging my knees, and let myself remember how I'd gotten here. How a defective Omega with no pheromones and no future had ended up with a phone number that connected directly to the most dangerous alpha in the country. How I'd gone from invisible to everything. Let me take you back. Back to 6 months ago, when I was still trying to be small enough that my family might forget I existed. 6 months ago I was invisible. Not metaphorically invisible. Not the kind of thing people say when they feel overlooked at a party or ignored in a conversation. I mean truly, genuinely unseen by the people who were supposed to love me. My family looked through me the way you look through a window, acknowledging the glass exists but never really seeing it. Like a stain on expensive wallpaper they desperately wished would disappear if they just stopped acknowledging it. I was 24 years old, the youngest of 5 children, and the family disgrace in every possible way that mattered to people like the Ashfords. My father, Marcus Ashford, was a pharmaceutical empire heir who'd married into old money and spent his entire adult life maintaining, obsessing over, the family's position among the city's elite. Every decision, every interaction, every breath was calculated to preserve our standing. My mother, Victoria, came from a dynasty of alphas so pure and powerful that their bloodline was literally studied in Omega biology textbooks. Having an Omega child at all had been a disappointment to her. Having a defective one was nothing short of catastrophic. My 4 older siblings were exactly what a family like ours ordered from the genetic lottery. Tall, beautiful, alpha, successful, and most importantly, normal. Adrian was CEO of the family's European pharmaceutical operations at 32, handling billion-dollar contracts before breakfast. Sophie was a celebrated neurosurgeon whose research papers were published in journals I couldn't even pronounce. Nicholas worked in international finance, the kind where he flew to Dubai on Tuesday and Singapore on Thursday. And Elise, my sister, had secured an engagement to the heir of the Castellano fortune. Old money that made our new money look like pocket change. Golden children, every single one of them. And then there was me, Kieran Ashford. 5'8" in a family where everyone else topped 6 feet. Slender where they were broad. Quiet where they were commanding. Omega where they were alpha. And limp, that's what they called it in our world. A limp Omega. The medical term is non-presenting Omega, but nobody uses that. Too clinical, too sympathetic. Limp cuts deeper, makes it clear exactly what you're lacking. I was born without the pheromones that make Omegas desirable. Without the biological allure that draws alphas like gravity. Without the fertility that makes Omegas valuable in a society that measures worth by bloodlines and breeding potential. My Omega glands were malformed, non-functional, essentially decorative. The medical tests when I was 13 had been thorough, humiliating, and absolutely certain in their conclusion. I would never have a heat cycle. Never be able to form a mate bond. never carry children. In a society where an Omega's entire worth was measured by those exact things, I was worthless. Less than worthless, actually, because at least something worthless doesn't consume resources. I was a black hole where the family's money and reputation disappeared, an investment with negative returns. My father had actually scheduled a meeting to tell me. Sat me down in his study the day after my diagnosis came back, poured himself a scotch, and explained very calmly, very reasonably, that I would not be included in the family trust, would not be given shares in the company, would not be provided the same education or opportunities as my siblings. It would be irresponsible, he'd said, swirling his drink like we were discussing stock portfolios, not my entire future, to invest resources in someone with no marketable value. You understand, surely. It's simply practical. I've been 13 years old. I nodded because I didn't know what else to do. Swallowed the hurt that felt like ground glass in my throat. Because that's what you did when you were defective. You made yourself small. You made yourself quiet. And you hoped that someday, somehow, someone might notice you were trying so damn hard to be good enough. They let me finish high school. That was generous of them, apparently. But college was not a practical investment for someone in your position. Instead, I was informed that I could continue living at home as long as I contributed appropriately to household expenses. Translation: they started charging me rent the month I turned 18. $1,500 a month to live in what used to be a storage room on the 4th floor of our mansion. A space barely large enough for a twin bed and a dresser that didn't quite fit against the wall. With a bathroom so small I had to share it with the housekeeper's quarters, which meant I showered at odd hours to avoid inconveniencing the actual staff. I worked 3 jobs to afford it. Morning shifts at a coffee shop where customers screamed at me about milk temperatures. Afternoons doing data entry for a call center where my supervisor timed my bathroom breaks. Evenings waiting tables at whatever restaurant would hire someone with no experience and a limp that got worse when I was tired. I kept my belongings minimal because there wasn't space for anything. Ate whatever meals I could afford alone in my room because family dinners were for family, and apparently I didn't qualify. Left the house before anyone woke up. Came home after everyone had gone to bed. I made myself as invisible as possible and told myself it was fine. That I was saving money, slowly, painfully slowly, and someday I'd have enough for a security deposit on my own place. A studio apartment in a bad neighborhood where at least nobody would look at me with disappointment in their eyes. And then maybe it wouldn't matter that my family had never wanted me. The breaking point came 3 weeks ago. I was working a catering gig for extra money. Some corporate event where I carried trays of food I couldn't afford to buy. My phone buzzed during a quiet moment, and I saw my mother's name flash across the screen. She never called me, never texted. The last time we'd spoken directly was months ago when she'd informed me that Christmas dinner was family only, and perhaps I could pick up an extra shift that day to offset the holiday expenses. My stomach clenched with instinctive dread, but I answered anyway, because part of me, that stupid, pathetic part that still hoped, thought maybe she was calling to say something kind. Maybe to invite me to something. Maybe to tell me she'd been thinking about me. Kieran. No greeting. No worms. Just my name like an accusation. We need to discuss your living situation. I'd nearly dropped the tray of champagne glasses I was holding. What about it? Your rent is increasing by $1,000 starting next month. $2,500 total. The floor seemed to tilt beneath my feet. $2,500. I was barely making $1,500 now, working myself to exhaustion across 3 jobs. Mom, I can't afford that. I can barely afford what I'm paying now. Then perhaps you should find more lucrative employment. Her voice was clipped, businesslike. Or consider relocating to more affordable accommodations. Translation: we want you gone, but we're too polite to say it directly. Is this because of Elisa's wedding? I'd asked quietly, pieces clicking into place. You don't want me there when her fiancé's family visits. You don't want them to know you have a defective Omega for a son. Don't be dramatic, Kieran. This is simply practical. You're 24 years old. Your siblings were all completely independent by your age. They'd all had trust funds worth millions and executive positions at the company by my age. But I didn't say that. Didn't point out the hypocrisy. Just stood there in my catering uniform, holding a tray of champagne for people who would never see me, and felt something inside me go numb. I understand, I'd said quietly. I'll figure something out. Good. I knew you'd be reasonable about this. She'd hung up without saying goodbye. I finished my shift in a daze, smiled at guests, cleared plates, pretended my world wasn't crumbling. And when I finally got home at midnight, I'd sat on my too-small bed in my too-small room and calculated exactly how long I could survive. 6 weeks. Maybe 2 months if I stopped eating anything except rice and beans. Then I'd be homeless. That's when I'd seen the posting. A catering company looking for servers for high-end private events. The pay was triple the normal rate, but the location made most people nervous. Moretti Tower. Everyone in the city knew the Moretti name, knew what they controlled. Legitimate businesses on paper, real estate, construction, import, export. But everyone knew the truth. The Moretti family controlled the city's entire underground network. Everything from illegal gambling to protection rackets to things people didn't talk about in polite company. They were dangerous, ruthless, the kind of people you avoided if you had any sense of self-preservation. But they paid triple rate and I was desperate. So I'd applied. And somehow I'd gotten accepted. The event was that Friday night. Some kind of business celebration on the penthouse level of Moretti Tower. A building so tall it literally scraped the clouds. I'd arrived 2 hours early because I couldn't afford to be late. Not when this job paid more than a week of my other work combined. The other servers had been nervous, talking in hushed whispers about who might attend, about what happened to people who made mistakes around the Moretti family, about the Alpha who ran everything with an iron fist and no mercy. I'd listened and felt nothing. No fear, no anxiety. Because honestly, what could the Moretti family do to me that my own family hadn't already done? The party itself was elegant in that understated way that screamed real money. No tacky displays of wealth, just perfect everything. Perfect food, perfect music, perfect guests in perfect suits conducting deals worth more money than I'd see in 10 lifetimes. I'd been assigned to the private lounge, a section cordoned off from the main event space, carrying drinks and canapes while men in expensive suits talked in low voices about things I definitely wasn't supposed to hear. That's when I saw him. Dante Moretti stood near the floor-to-ceiling windows, silhouetted against the city lights spread out below like scattered diamonds. He was tall, easily 6'3", with shoulders that strained against a black suit jacket that probably cost more than my yearly rent. Dark hair swept back from a face that looked like it had been carved from marble by someone who understood that beauty and danger weren't mutually exclusive. Sharp jaw, high cheekbones, and eyes so dark they looked black even from across the room. But it wasn't his appearance that made me stop and stare. It was his presence. The air around him practically vibrated with alpha pheromones so strong I could feel them even though my broken glands couldn't properly process them. It was like standing near a furnace. You couldn't see the heat, but you knew it was there. Knew it could burn you. Everyone in the room deferred to him. When he moved, people created space without conscious thought. When he spoke, conversations stopped. When he looked at someone, they either stood straighter or tried to disappear. He was the apex predator in a room full of predators, and every single person knew it. I was staring. I knew I was staring, but I couldn't seem to stop. There was something magnetic about him, something that made my broken Omega instincts wake up and take notice in a way they never had before. Like a radio signal I couldn't quite tune in but could sense was there, pulling at something deep in my chest. "You're new." His voice cut through my thoughts like a blade. deep and smooth and commanding in a way that made my spine straighten automatically. I jerked my head up to find him standing directly in front of me. I hadn't even seen him move. One moment he was across the room, and the next he was right there, close enough that I could see the exact shade of his eyes. Not black, deep brown, like expensive whiskey held up to light. Up close, he was even more overwhelming. His scent, what little I could perceive of it with my malformed glands, was clean and dark and made something in my chest respond like a tuning fork that had finally found the right frequency. First time working this venue, I managed, trying to keep my voice steady even though my heart was doing something complicated in my chest. Can I get you anything, sir? Your name. It wasn't a request. It was a command delivered in a tone that made it clear he expected to be obeyed. Kieran. Kieran Ashford. Something flickered in his expression. Surprise, maybe, or recognition. His head tilted slightly, studying me with an intensity that made me feel like he was cataloging every detail. Ashford, as in the pharmaceutical Ashfords. My stomach clenched with familiar dread. This was the part where people either looked at me with pity or contempt, where they wondered what scandal had brought an Ashford down to working catering jobs, where they realized I was the defective one and lost interest immediately. Yes, sir, I said quietly. He studied me for another long moment, and I forced myself to hold his gaze even though every instinct screamed to look away, to make myself smaller, to apologize for existing. And you're working catering at my building. It wasn't a question, but I answered anyway. I need the money, sir. Why? The question was too direct, too personal for someone I just met. But something about the way he asked, like he genuinely wanted to know, like my answer actually mattered, made me tell the truth. My family decided I wasn't worth investing in, so I work whatever jobs pay enough to survive. The temperature in the room seemed to drop 10 degrees. His jaw tightened, and for the first time since I'd noticed him, he looked genuinely angry. Not at me. The anger was directed somewhere else, burning behind his eyes like banked coals. They decided you weren't worth investing in. He repeated my words slowly, like he was tasting them, testing them, and finding them unacceptable. I'm limp, I said flatly, because there was no point in hiding it. Everyone found out eventually.
No pheromones, no EATs, no fertility.
In their world, that makes me worthless. His eyes went darker, dangerous in a way that should have terrified me but somehow didn't. And in yours? The question caught me off guard. Nobody had ever asked me that. What I thought, what my world looked like. In mine, I said quietly, I'm just trying to survive one day at a time. He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze never leaving my face. Then he pulled out his phone, typed something quickly with sharp, efficient movements. I just tripled your payment for tonight. Consider it a signing bonus. You don't have to. I don't have to do anything, he interrupted, and there was steel in his voice. I want to. How old are you, Kieran? 24. And you still live with them? Your family? I nodded, feeling the familiar shame creep up my spine, trying to save up for my own place. It's taking longer than I hoped. I bet it is. He pocketed his phone, and when he looked at me again, there was something new in his expression, something that looked almost like decision. I want you working my events exclusively from now on. Tell your agency I'm requesting you specifically. Only you. Why? The question slipped out before I could stop it. His smile was sharp, satisfied, and did something to my pulse. Because I want to see you again. That a good enough reason. It should have worried me, should have sent up red flags the size of billboards. But all I felt was warmth spreading through my chest, filling spaces that had been cold for so long I'd forgotten they existed. Okay, I heard myself say. I'll come back. Good. He turned to leave, then paused and looked back at me. And Kieran? Eat something tonight before you leave. You look like you're about to fall over, and that's not a request. It's an order." Then he was gone, disappearing back into the crowd of suits and power, and I was left standing there with my heart racing and my mind spinning, and the strangest feeling that something fundamental had just shifted in my life. I didn't know it then, but he was right. Everything had just changed. The next event was 3 days later. Another gathering at Moretti Tower, but this time when I arrived at the building, the usual coordinator wasn't there. Instead, one of Dante's security team, a mountain of a man who introduced himself as Marco, directed me to a private elevator I hadn't even known existed. "Mr. Moretti is expecting you," he'd said. Like that explained everything. The elevator had no buttons, just a keycard reader that Marco swiped before stepping back. "Penthouse level. He'll meet you at the door." "Is there an event tonight?" I'd asked, confused. Marco's expression had been carefully neutral. "You'll have to ask him that." The elevator rose so smoothly I barely felt the movement, and when the doors opened, I stepped directly into a private foyer. Not the event spaces I'd worked before. This was someone's home. Dante's home. Before I could process that or decide whether I should run back into the elevator, the door ahead opened and Dante appeared. But not the Dante from the business event. This Dante wore dark jeans and a black t-shirt, sleeves pushed up to his elbows, revealing forearms that made my mouth go dry. He looked relaxed, almost casual, except for the intensity in his eyes when he saw me. "Kieran." He said my name like he was pleased to see me, and something warm bloomed in my chest. Right on time. "Come in." "Is there an event tonight?" I asked, not moving from the elevator. "No event. Just dinner." He stepped back, creating space for me to enter. "I wanted to talk to you without an audience." Every logical part of my brain was screaming that this was a terrible idea, that I was standing at the threshold of the most dangerous man in the city's private home, that I should make an excuse and leave. But I'd spent 24 years listening to the logical part of my brain, and where had that gotten me? Living in a storage room, working 3 jobs to afford rent to my own family, invisible and worthless and alone. So I stepped inside. The penthouse was elegant in that understated way that screamed real wealth. Original art on the walls, pieces I recognized from my mother's art magazines. Furniture that looked expensive because it was comfortable, not showy. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the entire city spread out below like a kingdom. Dante led me through the space to a kitchen bigger than my entire room and pointed at a stool. "Sit." I sat, mostly because something about his command made my body want to obey before my brain caught up, and watched as he moved around the space with easy confidence. He cooked like someone who actually knew what they were doing. Precise movements, confident handling of ingredients, none of the hesitation of someone following a recipe. "You cook?" I asked because it seemed safer than acknowledging how much I was enjoying watching him move. "My mother insisted all her children learn. Said we shouldn't be helpless just because we had money." His hands moved efficiently, chopping vegetables with practiced ease. Turns out she was right. "You can look," he said without turning around, and I realized he'd caught me staring. Again. "I don't mind." My face heated. "I wasn't." He glanced over his shoulder with a knowing look that made my stomach flip. "You were. And it's fine, Kieran. I like it when you look at me." I didn't know what to say to that, so I stayed quiet and tried not to be too obvious about watching the way his shoulders flexed when he reached for things, the way his hands moved with precise efficiency. When he set a plate in front of me 15 minutes later, pasta in a cream sauce that smelled incredible, garnished with fresh herbs and Parmesan, I stared at it like I'd forgotten what real food looked like. "Eat," he commanded, leaning against the counter across from me. I picked up the fork and took a bite, and it was good. Really good. The kind of good that made me realize how long it had been since I'd eaten anything that wasn't the cheapest option at the grocery store. He watched me in silence for a moment, then asked quietly, "When did you eat last?" And don't lie to me. This morning, I said automatically. Try again. I put down my fork. Yesterday afternoon. Something dangerous flickered in his eyes. You're used to not eating. I'm saving money, I said, like that made it okay. Like it was normal to be 24 and strategically starving myself to afford rent to my own family. For an apartment your family should be providing. It wasn't a question. He pushed off the counter and moved around the island until he was standing directly in front of me. Close enough that I had to tilt my head back to maintain eye contact. Can I ask you something? Anything. Are you afraid of me? I thought about it honestly. Looked at this alpha who everyone feared, who controlled half the city with violence and strategy, who could destroy me with a word. And I realized the truth. I should be, I said quietly. Everyone else is. But you're not.
No.
I met his eyes. You've been kinder to me in 2 meetings than my family has been in 24 years. You tripled my pay for no reason. You're feeding me because you noticed I was hungry. So no, I'm not afraid of you. His expression shifted into something I couldn't quite read. Satisfaction, maybe, or something deeper, more intense. Good, because I'm going to keep inviting you here, Kieran. Keep feeding you, keep getting to know you, and I want you to say yes every time. Why me? I pushed my plate away, suddenly unable to eat. You could have anyone. Why choose someone broken? He moved closer, until he was standing right in front of my stool. Up close, even without functioning omega glands, I could sense his power. The alpha authority that radiated from him like heat. You're not broken. You're perfect exactly as you are. And the people who couldn't see that don't deserve you. His hand came up, fingers brushing my cheek with unexpected gentleness. So yes, I'm choosing you. Is that going to be a problem? My heart was doing something complicated in my chest. Racing and stuttering and feeling too big for my ribcage. I don't know, I admitted. Fair enough. His hand dropped, but he didn't step back. Then keep coming back. Let me show you what it feels like to be wanted. We'll figure out the rest as we go. Okay, I whispered, because despite everything, the danger, the impossibility, the fact that I barely knew him, I wanted to come back. Wanted to feel this again. This sensation of matching to someone. Good. He stepped back finally, giving me space to breathe. Now finish your wine and then I'm driving you home. I saw that death trap you call a car in the parking garage. I need it for work. Not anymore. He pulled out his phone, typing quickly. I'm having something better delivered tomorrow. Don't argue, it's not negotiable. You work for me now. That means I make sure you're safe. And that should have felt overwhelming. Should have felt like too much too fast. But instead it felt like someone finally seeing me. Finally caring whether I lived or died. From there, everything changed. Twice a week turned into 3 times. Then 4. Manufactured events that paid obscenely well but were really just excuses to spend time together. We talked while he cooked, and he always cooked, always made sure I ate until I was full. He asked questions that were too personal, and I answered them anyway because he listened like my answers mattered. I learned that he'd taken over the family operations at 25 when his father was killed in a territorial dispute. That he hated the violence but was brutally, efficiently good at it. That he'd built an empire on fear and strategy, but underneath the ruthless exterior was someone who noticed when I was tired, when my leg hurt from standing too long, when I needed to hear that I mattered. I told him about my childhood, about watching my siblings receive everything. Love, education, trust funds, opportunities, while I received nothing but disappointment and barely concealed disgust. About the tiny room I paid too much for and the way my family made me feel like I was constantly taking up space I didn't deserve. He listened with an intensity that made me feel heard in a way I never had before. And sometimes his expression would go dark and lethal when I talked about the worst parts. his hands clenching like he was physically restraining himself from hunting down everyone who'd ever hurt me. And through it all, I was falling. Helplessly, inevitably falling for him. I noticed it in small ways first. The way my eyes tracked his movements automatically. The way my body responded to his presence even without pheromones to guide me. My pulse quickening when he entered a room. My breathing changing when he stood close. The way I caught myself leaning toward him without meaning to, craving his attention like oxygen. I thought I was hiding it well until 8 weeks in when everything shifted. It was a Friday night, and I'd worked a double shift at the restaurant before coming to his place. I was exhausted, my leg aching from hours of standing, barely holding myself upright. Dante took one look at me when I stepped off the elevator and steered me straight toward his bedroom. "You're staying tonight," he said, and it wasn't a question. "I should go home. You're exhausted. You can barely stand. You're staying." His hands were gentle as he helped me sit on the bed. "Let me take care of you." Something in his voice, in the way he looked at me like I was precious instead of broken, made my defenses crumble. "Okay." He disappeared into the bathroom, and I heard water running. When he came back, he helped me up and guided me into the bathroom where he'd drawn a hot bath. Steam rose from the water and I could smell something herbal, bath salts maybe, or essential oils. "Get in," he said softly. "I'll bring you something comfortable to wear." I should have been embarrassed, should have protested, but I was too tired, and the idea of that hot water was too appealing. I stripped slowly, my leg protesting every movement, and sank into the tub with a sigh that was almost a groan. The water was perfect. Hot enough to ease the tension from my muscles but not scalding. I closed my eyes and let myself float, feeling the stress of the day start to dissolve. When I emerged 20 minutes later in the clothes he'd left, soft sleep pants and one of his t-shirts that hung huge on my smaller frame, he was sitting on the bed waiting. "Come here," he said softly, and I went. Let him pull me down beside him, his arm coming around my shoulders and tucking me against his side. "You can't keep working yourself into the ground like this." "I have to. The rent increased." "Stop paying it." I pulled back to look at him. "What?" "Move in here. With me." His eyes were serious, intense, and completely certain. "You're here most days anyway. Stop giving them money you can barely afford. Stop living in a room that's barely livable. Move in with me." "Dante, we've only been, whatever this is, for 2 months. So?" His hand came up to cup my face, thumb brushing my cheekbone. "I know what I want, Kieran. I've known since the first night you walked into my building looking like you were trying to be invisible. I want you here, in my space, in my life, in my bed. What if you get tired of me?" The question came out small, scared. "What if you realize I'm not worth? Not going to happen?" He said it with absolute certainty, like it was a fact rather than a hope. "But if you need time to trust that, take it. Just know the offer stands. My home is yours whenever you're ready." I lasted 3 more days before I called him and said yes. Moving out was surprisingly easy. I owned almost nothing. A few changes of clothes, some books, basic toiletries. My entire life fit into 2 boxes and a duffel bag. Dante sent people to get my things while my family wasn't home, and within hours, my entire existence fit into the back of one SUV. When I arrived at the penthouse with my pathetic collection of belongings, Dante was waiting. He showed me the guest room he'd prepared, decorated in soft blues and grays, with a bed that looked like a cloud and windows overlooking the city. But we both knew I wouldn't be sleeping there. He showed me the closet he'd cleared for me, an entire walk-in space bigger than my old room. My few clothes looked lost in the vast emptiness. "We'll fix that," he said when he saw me staring at the empty space. "Tomorrow we're going shopping." "I can't afford." "I can." His hand found mine, fingers lacing together. "Let me take care of you, Kieran. Let me give you everything they should have given you and didn't." That night, Lying in his bed with his arms around me for the first time, I felt safe in a way I hadn't since before my diagnosis. Maybe safer than I'd ever felt. "Thank you," I whispered into the dark. "For what?" "For seeing me. For wanting me even though I'm broken." He pulled me closer, his lips pressing against my hair. "You're not broken. You never were. They were just too blind to see what they had." Living with Dante meant seeing parts of his world I'd only glimpsed before. The violence that came with his position. The decisions that required ruthlessness. The enemies who needed to be dealt with permanently. I woke up one night 2 weeks after moving in to find his side of the bed cold. Found him in his office at 3 in the morning, blood on his knuckles, dealing with someone who'd crossed him over a video call. The man on the screen was begging, pleading, making promises he'd never be able to keep. Dante ended the call with 2 words, "Do it." Then he hung up, and that man's fate was sealed. I should have been terrified. Should have run back to the bedroom and pretended I hadn't seen. Should have started packing my things. Instead, I'd gotten the first aid kit from the bathroom and cleaned his hands while he watched me with those intense dark eyes. "You're not scared," he'd said, almost wondering. "Should I be? Most people would be. I'm not most people." I'd bandaged his knuckles carefully, my hands steady. "And I know who you are, Dante. All of it. The business, the violence, the things you have to do. The darkness doesn't scare me." Something had shifted in his expression then. Relief, maybe, or recognition that I saw all of him and was staying anyway. "I love you," he'd said, simple and certain. "I'm in love with you, Kieran. Have been for weeks." My breath had caught in my throat. "I love you too. So much it terrifies me." He'd pulled me into his lap then, kissed me like he was sealing something unbreakable. When he pulled back, his eyes were burning with intensity. "Marry me."
Ide frusen.
"What?" "Marry me. Make it legal and permanent. I want everyone to know you're mine." His hands framed my face. "Say yes." "Yes," I'd whispered, because despite everything, the speed, the impossibility, I wanted it, wanted him, wanted forever. "Yes, I'll marry you." We'd gone to the courthouse 3 days later. Just us and Marco as a witness. I'd worn a simple gray suit Dante had bought me. He'd worn black, and we'd stood in front of a judge and promised forever to each other. The rings were white gold bands, elegant and simple. And when the judge pronounced us married, Dante had kissed me like he was claiming me in front of the world. "Mine," he'd murmured against my lips. "Legally, officially, completely mine." "Yours," I'd agreed. "Always." That was 3 months ago. 3 months of learning what it meant to be loved, to be wanted, to matter to someone. Dante was possessive and protective in ways that should have felt suffocating but instead felt like safety, like home. He made sure I ate regular meals, made sure I rested, insisted I see doctors about my leg, about my omega glands, not to fix me but to make sure I was healthy and not in pain. He introduced me to his organization as his husband, and anyone who showed even a hint of disrespect disappeared from his operations immediately. My family had no idea about any of it. I'd blocked their numbers, changed all my contact information, disappeared from their lives as completely as they'd always wanted me to, until Elisa's wedding invitation arrived. It came to Dante's office, addressed to Kieran Ashford, care of Moretti Tower. Heavy cream paper with gold lettering, announcing the wedding of Elise Ashford and Leonardo Castellano. But inside was a handwritten note from my mother that made my stomach drop. "Kieran, we hope you'll attend Elisa's wedding. We understand you may have difficulty affording appropriate attire or a gift, so we've arranged a position for you with the catering staff. You'll be paid for your time, and it will allow you to be present for your sister's special day without the burden of expenses. Please confirm with the catering manager by Friday." Mother. I stared at it for a long time, read it twice, 3 times, trying to process what they'd done. They'd invited me to my own sister's wedding. As staff, they thought they were being kind, giving me a way to attend and make money at the same time, never once considering that maybe, just maybe, their son deserved to be at his sister's wedding as family. Dante had found me sitting at his desk, the invitation in my hands, something breaking inside my chest. What is it? He'd taken the card from me, read it, and I'd watched his expression go from confusion to absolute fury. They invited you to work your sister's wedding. They think they're being kind, I'd said, voice hollow, giving me a way to attend and make money at the same time. They probably genuinely believe they're doing me a favor. That's not kindness. That's cruelty dressed up as charity. He'd crouched in front of me, hands on my knees. You're not going. I have to. Why? Because if I don't, I'll always wonder. I'll always have that small, pathetic part of me hoping they might want me there, hoping they might see me as family. And I need to kill that hope, Dante. I need to see them do their worst so I can finally let it go. He'd studied my face for a long moment. Then I'm coming with you.
No.
I'd touched his face, feeling the tension in his jaw. If you're there, they'll behave. They'll be polite and fake, and I won't get what I need. I need to see them as they really are. One last time. I need to let that little boy inside me who's still hoping for their love finally understand that it's never coming. I don't like this. I know. But I need to do it. I'd leaned forward, pressed my forehead to his. And when it gets too much, when I can't take any more, I'll call you. And you'll come get me. The second you call, he'd promised fiercely. The second you need me, I'm there. So I'd accepted. Confirmed with the catering manager. Spent the next 2 weeks trying not to think about what it would feel like to serve drinks at my sister's wedding while my family celebrated without me. Which brings us back to now. Back to me sitting on a cold marble floor in a service corridor, counting down the minutes until Dante arrives. I can hear the party continuing without me. The orchestra playing a waltz. Glasses clinking. My father's booming laugh as he tells some story to the Castellano family. 15 minutes have passed. 5 more to go. I close my eyes and let myself remember every kind word Dante's ever said to me. Every gentle touch. Every time he's called me perfect when the rest of the world called me broken. Then the noise changes. The music cuts off mid-note. Conversations die like someone flipped a switch. And through the service window I see why. The ballroom doors have burst open. Dante Moretti strides through them like an avenging angel, dressed in a black suit that looks like violence wrapped in Italian tailoring. 6 of his men flank him, Marco and 5 others I recognize from the security detail. They move through the crowd like sharks, and the elite guests part instinctively, survival instincts overriding social conditioning. His eyes sweep the room once, cataloging everything, before locking onto me through the service window. Our eyes meet, and something in my chest unlocks. He's here. He came. The crowd might as well not exist as he walks straight through them. Past my sister, frozen in her wedding gown with champagne glass halfway to her lips. Past my parents, who've gone white as they recognize him. Past Leonardo Castellano and his family. Past 300 elite guests who've suddenly realized they're watching something extraordinary unfold. The service door slams open and then he's there, crouching in front of me, his hands gentle as they cup my face. I'm here, baby, he murmurs, and his voice is soft for me but loud enough for people nearby to hear. Let's go home. He helps me to my feet, his arm wrapping around my waist like I'm precious cargo, like I matter. And he turns us toward the exit, toward freedom. What is the meaning of this? My father's voice cuts through the silence, loud with indignation and confusion. We stop and Dante turns slowly to look at him. You can't just burst in here and... I can't. Dante's voice is soft, lethal. Your son called me, my husband. He was crying in a service corridor because you invited him to his own sister's wedding as hired help. So yes, I absolutely can burst in here. I came to bring him home. The gasps that ripple through the ballroom sound like a wave crashing. Husband. My mother's voice is faint, disbelieving. Kieran, what is he talking about? Dante's arm tightens around me, protective and possessive. He's talking about the fact that 3 months ago, Kieran became my husband. Legally, officially, permanently. That's impossible. My father sputters. We would have known. You would have known if you'd bothered to maintain contact with your son. But you didn't. You were too busy charging him rent to live in a closet. Each word is precise, cutting. Refusing to invest in his education. Treating him like he was worthless because he's limp. And today you invited him to his own sister's wedding. As staff. So you could remind him one more time that he wasn't good enough to sit with his own family. The silence in the ballroom is absolute now. Dante looks at each of my family members in turn. Adrian, Sophie, Nicholas, Elise, my parents. His gaze is measuring, judging, finding them wanting. Your defective son, he says, and the word defective drips with contempt for their judgment, is the heir to my entire empire. His word carries the same weight as mine. He owns property in 6 countries. Has access to more money than your entire family will see in 3 generations. He pauses. And he's the most important person in my world. He turns to look down at me, and his expression softens. You ready to go home, baby? I nod, not trusting my voice. Then let's go. He guides me toward the door again, then pauses one more time. Looks back at my family with eyes that promise consequences. If any of you try to contact him, harass him, or show up at our home uninvited, you'll be dealing with me. And trust me when I say you really, truly don't want that. The threat hangs in the air, clear and absolute. We walk out of that ballroom together, leaving 300 shocked guests and my stunned family behind. The car is waiting, not just any car, but Dante's personal vehicle with Marco at the wheel. He helps me inside with infinite care before sliding in beside me. The door closes. The car pulls away. And I finally, completely fall apart. The sobs come from somewhere deep inside, huge and wrenching. Years of pain and rejection and trying so hard to be good enough finally breaking through. I bury my face in Dante's chest and cry like I haven't since I was 13 and received my diagnosis. I've got you, he murmurs, pulling me against him. You're safe. You're mine. And you never have to see them again. He holds me through all of it. Strokes my hair. Murmurs reassurances in Italian and English. Lets me soak his expensive suit with tears and doesn't care even a little bit. When I finally calm enough to breathe, I pull back to look at him. Thank you for coming. Always. He cups my face, thumbs brushing away tears. Every single time you need me, I'm there. That's what forever means. I love you, I whisper. I love you too. He kisses me softly. Now let's go home. The aftermath was predictable. My family tried everything to reach me. Phone calls that Dante's security screened. Letters that were returned unopened. Attempts to visit that were turned away at building security. Finally, 2 weeks later, my father showed up at Dante's office building. Demanded a meeting. Dante had agreed, but only with me present and only on our terms. We met in the conference room, neutral territory. My father, mother, and Adrian on one side of the massive table. Dante and me on the other, his hand covering mine on the polished wood surface. Kieran, please. My mother started, and she actually looked distressed. We need to talk about what happened at the wedding. What happened, I said quietly, was the final confirmation of what I've always known, that I don't matter to you, that I never did. That's not true, my father said quickly. We made mistakes, yes, but we're still your family. We still love you.
No.
I kept my voice steady, even though my heart was pounding. You stopped being my family the day you decided I wasn't worth investing in. The day you started charging me rent to live in a storage room. The day you invited me to Elisa's wedding as staff instead of family. We thought we were helping, my mother insisted, and she might have even believed it. Giving you a way to attend without the financial burden of. You thought you were putting me in my place. Dante interrupted, his voice like ice, reminding him that he wasn't good enough to sit with his own blood. Don't insult our intelligence by pretending otherwise. Adrian leaned forward, his CEO voice activated. Look, we acknowledge we handled things poorly, but surely we can move past this. We're willing to make amends. To include Kieran in the family trust, to... Why? I asked, cutting him off. Why now? Why after 24 years? The silence that followed told me everything I needed to know. It's because of who I married, I said flatly. Isn't it? 3 months of silence, and now you want to make amends because I'm connected to the Moretti family. Because I might be useful to you. That's not. My mother started. Yes, it is. I felt surprisingly calm. If I'd married anyone else, if I'd just moved on and disappeared like you wanted, we wouldn't be having this conversation. But I married someone powerful, someone who could potentially be useful to your business interests. So now suddenly I matter. My father shifted uncomfortably in his chair. You're our son, Kieran. We want what's best for you. Then you should be happy, I said, standing. Dante rose with me, his presence solid at my back. Because I have exactly what's best for me. A husband who loves me. A home where I'm wanted. A life where I don't have to apologize for existing. I looked at each of them in turn. And none of it has anything to do with you. Kieran, please. My mother reached out. I'm done. I moved toward the door, Dante's hand finding the small of my back. Live your lives. Celebrate your perfect alpha children. Build your dynasty. And forget I exist. Because I'm finally going to forget about you. We left them sitting there at that conference table, and I didn't look back. Not once. That was 2 months ago now. 2 months of peace. Of learning what it meant to live without constantly bracing for rejection. To wake up next to someone who chose me every single day. Who looked at me like I was the best thing that ever happened to him instead of the worst. My family tried a few more times to reach out. A birthday card that arrived on my 25th birthday, the first one they'd sent in 7 years. An invitation to Christmas dinner. A letter from Elise apologizing for the wedding situation. But I didn't respond. Didn't read most of them. Eventually they stopped. Accepted that I was serious. That I was done. Dante held me through it all. The grief of losing family I'd never really had. The relief of finally being free. The slow, careful process of learning to believe I was worth loving. No regrets, he asks one night as we stand on the balcony of the penthouse, watching the city lights spread out below us like scattered stars. I turn in his arms, look up at the man who saved me in every way that mattered. The man who saw me when I was invisible, who wanted me when I was broken, who loved me when I couldn't love myself. Not a single one, I say honestly. You? Never. He kisses me softly, thoroughly. You're the best thing that ever happened to me, Kieran. And I'm going to spend the rest of our lives making sure you never doubt that. Forever. I whisper against his lips. Forever, he promises. And standing there in his arms, finally safe and wanted and home, I believe him. I started invisible, worthless in my family's eyes. A defective Omega with no value, no future, no hope. But I ended up exactly where I belong. With an Alpha who sees me, values me, loves me with an intensity that still takes my breath away. Some stories have happy endings. Mine is just beginning. Did this story touch your heart the way it touched ours? We'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below and tell us your favorite moment, or share if you've ever felt invisible until someone finally saw you for who you really are. Your stories inspire us to keep creating these journeys with you. And if you're craving more emotional, transformative love stories that will make you feel everything, hit that subscribe button and ring the notification bell. We have so many more tales of found family, unexpected love, and characters who discover they were never broken, just waiting for the right person to see them. Until next time, keep believing in the power of being truly seen. Keep daydreaming in BL.